a lot of the problems that entrepreneurs and business owners are having is that they have a problem and a solution that are not aligned. Sometimes the problem is correct, but the solution is not. Sometimes it's the other way around. Effective positioning. Entrepreneurs and business owners are looking in the wrong location. This is how we could leverage that information, that research that we just did. That is evidence, that is data that tells you that there's a possibility customers who's going to want to buy this. Welcome. And now we are going to start covering some of the key points here. So for module 1, which is focused on building your winning funnel, we're going to go over 4 different subtopics: understanding your audience, which today is about, crafting the perfect lead magnet, optimizing your funnel by stages, and analyzing performance. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we start jumping into funnels, let's talk about overall failures that businesses and startups tend to see. So CB Insights, they researched over 110 startups, and they identified 12 reasons why startups, generally speaking, fail. And this is across niches, this is across industry. The top 3 are the ones that I have listed here: ran out of cash, no market need, and getting out competed. So let's go ahead and start talking about running out of cash. This is not an exhaustive list. I want to be able to break down some of these reasons why businesses tend to fail. So in regards to running out of cash, I would say one of the factors that contributes to that is that there's not enough sales that is happening. In other words, sales is poor. Running out of cash essentially means the expenses is way higher than the revenue that is coming in. If the business was generating enough revenue in the right amount of speed, then this wouldn't be a concern. So this is an area that we're going to explore as to what drives higher revenue. The next reason is no market need. So as you can see here in this list, a lot of the problems that entrepreneurs and business owners are having is that they have a problem and a solution that are not aligned. It is important to understand what is the customer's problem, and be able to fit the solution. Sometimes the problem is correct, but the solution is not. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the solution is correct, but the problem is not. And for the second one, some of you may be asking, how is that so? Sometimes there may be an expert who has worked at a company for such a long time that they have a good understanding of the solution, but maybe that expert is not really intimate with all the marketing that is happening in the company, and not really intimate with understanding the audience. So he may have a great solution, but it might be to the wrong problem or the wrong customer. The second one, I already started touching on this. It may be possible that an entrepreneur or business owner is targeting the wrong audience. If you're targeting the wrong audience, there's not going to be any sales. The third one is entering a crowded marketplace without differentiation. So usually, to be able to differentiate, the first critical piece is the ones that I mentioned above: having the right ideal customer, the right audience, understanding the problem that you're solving for this ideal audience or customer, and then having a solution and therefore a product that manages and satisfies that problem that the audience is having. So that is the baseline. If an entrepreneur or business owner is able to satisfy that problem, then he or she is going to stand out in a crowded marketplace. And then differentiating in the sense of adding additional benefits to it is going to make it much more superb. And we will be talking about that in future sessions. And then the third reason is getting out competed. So here is about a lack of differentiation, which I already touched on what makes differentiation. And then the second piece to this one is ineffective positioning. Essentially, what that means is entrepreneurs and business owners are looking in the wrong location. So for example, if we're looking at digital marketing or digital marketplaces, it may be possible that a lot of the audience happens to be in YouTube, but the entrepreneur and business owner is really focused on Facebook. So there's a disconnect there from a positioning standpoint or a channel standpoint. Positioning also means how are you standing out, or how are you different and unique versus the competition. So sometimes if that is not effective, especially in a crowded marketplace, then the business is not going to stand out and get the attention that the entrepreneur and business owner wants. So as we look at this slide, this is a focus on what are the key aspects of the audience that we really want to understand and really understand at an intimate level. And there's four of these: desires, problems, internal conflicts, and emotion. So for example, let's look at desire. What is it that the audience wants? What is it that gives them pleasure? What is going to make them happy? So it's really understanding that key aspect of desires. The second one is problems. What are the pain points? So if I have a headache, I probably want an aspirin. I want to get rid of this headache. This headache is a problem for me. It's impeding me from being able to focus and do my work conveniently, for example. The third one is internal conflict. So what is the conflict between the desire and problem? So for example, if there's an ambitious corporate executive who wants to continue climbing up the career path, there's going to be a lot more work, a lot more commitment and responsibility that that executive is going to end up having. However, a problem that he's having is that there's not enough work-life balance. He wants to be able to have some time carved out so he could spend time with the family. So that is an internal conflict that is happening with the audience. And then the fourth piece is what are all the different emotions that this audience is going through? What are his fears? What's keeping him or her up at night? What are the frustrations? What are the joy? And so on and so forth. So being able to understand all these different emotions gives us additional color to really understanding the audience. Now that we understand the audience from the standpoint of desire, problems, internal conflicts, and emotions, then this is how we could leverage that information, that research that we just did. The first one is the more we understand our ideal customer, our audience, the easier it is for us to be able to shape an offer, create an offer that is very specific to solving the pain points, the problems that the audience is having, and satisfying some of those desires, if not all of the desires that they're having. The second piece is the messaging, being able to communicate in a language that resonates with that ideal audience and customer. So the more the language is very similar to what is going inside the heads of the audience, the better, because that's going to be language that's going to get their attention. And then the third piece here is channel. Where is the audience congregating? This is important because, as mentioned earlier, if we're positioning or in the wrong location and the audience is somewhere else, we're essentially providing an offer and messaging to a platform where none of your audience is actually that, and that's not best use of resources. So here are different methods to going about understanding your audience, essentially broken down to two: primary research and secondary research. Primary research is a much more involved process, and this is where you may conduct surveys to an existing audience or buy a list and throw out a survey out there. This could also be done digitally. For example, going on Facebook and just dropping one question, a key question, and based on the response from your network or even outside of your network, you could reach out and tap into those individuals to get more specific for a focus group. A focus group is essentially being able to interview one or multiple individuals at a time so that you could get deeper into really understanding what is happening inside the minds of the customer. It doesn't just have to be the customer. It could also be a competitor, someone who works at that company who's willing to share that information, those insights, in exchange for some type of compensation. It could be a supplier of some sort, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be customers. However, customers is going to be the key and primary focus because those are the individuals that you are directly wanting to help out. The third one is shadowing. This is essentially the day of spending an entire day with your ideal customer or spending a chunk of the day with your ideal customer audience and them actually going through the process of doing something. So if you are, for example, a gym owner, then you could shadow potential prospects at a different gym, see what it is that they're doing, what are they learn what it is that they're frustrated, why they're doing a certain activity, and why certain sequence, and so on and so forth. And that will give you a lot of color. As you could imagine, this is much more expensive in terms of process because it requires a lot of your time or your team's time. And then there's others that I think are self-explanatory: web ads and link. Uh, well, essentially what that means is you could do primary research by creating ads, simple landing pages, really for the purpose of understanding what is the potential problem and solution that people are getting. And this could also be used for A/B testing, which is what are good headlines that will captivate the audience. So with that said, you could create, you as an entrepreneur and business owner, if you're creating a new product or you're still trying to figure out the kinks in an existing product, creating an ad with the right headline that talks about the problem and talks about the solution that you're bringing to the table, if there's a lot of clicks behind that link, even if the landing page is not even ready, that is evidence, that is data, primary research that tells you that there's a possibility that there's going to be entrepreneurs and business owners out there or customers who's going to want to buy this. So something to be mindful of. So now let's switch over to the secondary research. In the secondary research, essentially, this is sitting on a desk and doing a whole bunch of desktop research. That's really what it comes down to. And some of the tools that are really good for this will be using search engines, trying to identify what are key phrases, and in the process of doing that, seeing what's available, going through the various social medias, depending on the offer, the niche, and so on and so forth. You may want to jump into Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on. Discussion forums like Reddit and Quora, they will have sometimes valuable information if the audience is present. And then there's industry and company reports, studying the competition, studying more about the industry, and then there's blogs and articles. So these are the two primary methods, primary research and secondary research, to really get you to understand your customer. So for the purpose of understanding the audience, we're going to focus on these four aspects of research that we want to be able to conduct. So as we conduct the research, we want to understand what are the channels, where is it that the audience, the ideal customer, congregates, where do they spend their time? Because most likely if they're spending a lot of their time there, that's where they get a lot of information to make their next purchase. We also want to be able to understand the psychographics. What are the interests, the lifestyle choices, the values that they essentially have, because this was going to give us a lot of information on how to go about messaging and creating offers to them. Benefits. What is the benefit of the audience having such a service? It doesn't necessarily have to be your service, you are being the entrepreneur and business owner. It could be a competitor's service or product. And this is important information because it helps ties in what it is that they're getting from this. So for example, if there is an individual going to the gym, the benefit of going to the gym is that he or she is going to have more energy, potentially lose weight, and so on and so forth. Demographic. Demographic is focused on the age, the gender, location, income level, and so on and so forth. Out of all of these, I would say the priority is going to be the channel and psychographics. Demographic is more useful when conducting ads, so being able to locate and market size or size your market. But in terms of what is the messaging, what is the offer is going to come about, it's largely going to be the psychographics. Channel helps us understand where exactly we need to be focusing that energy, and benefit helps supplement the psychographics so that we can make sure that as we're thinking about the offer and some of the language, some of that is mentioned in there. So now we're going to take a look at overall profiling and go through a few examples in terms of how this could potentially look. So now we're going to look at channel specifically and how to go about conducting research to be able to understand where your customer is at. There's a number of different platforms that we could leverage from a digital desktop standpoint. So we're going to be focused on secondary research throughout. So the first one is search engines. So search engines would be Google, Bing, Yahoo. On the right side, I have Amazon and YouTube. Those are also considered search engines because so much searches are being conducted there by so many different audiences from all sorts of niches. So with that said, I did put them in here as a separate, just to remind us that these are platforms, channels that we actually want to leverage as we conduct our research and understanding the customer. Social media groups, the ones that I have in mind as I wrote this down would be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and so on and so forth. And then the third one would be discussion forums. There are discussion forums, the more popular ones being Reddit and Quora. Most likely, if nothing is found there, then the odds of finding something at a different platform has a lower probability.